We'll call this meeting to order. Police, Fire, and Ambulance Committee meeting. This meeting and all meetings of this committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes. Those in citizenry may be aware of time, place, and agenda of the meeting. We'll have a roll call.
Kempf,
Here.
Brunner, here. Gunderson.
Here.
Okay. We look then for approve the minutes from December 8th, 2015.
So moved. I'll second it.
All right, motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes from December 8th, 2015. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Citizens appearance? I have nothing. Okay, department update?
Well, does anybody have any questions on the number of calls for service in March? It was 173 through the 31st of March, and a total year-to-date of 533, which is significantly ahead of last year.
We're almost at 600 now.
The last 2 weeks have been particularly busy with a lot of labor-intensive calls, sexual assaults, some drug investigations going on that have required extra staff to come in. That'll be reflected in next month's committee meeting.
See one overdose here. How'd that turn out?
He made it.
Do you
Heroin.
administer that? What is it called again?
Narcan?
Do you do that yet? Or-
We didn't have to.
Oh, but I mean, you're capable of doing
We're
that?
capable of administering it. Everybody carries it with them, so if there's a situation we get into where the ambulance is gonna be too far out, or it's looking to be grim, we would administer it. Everybody's been trained.
Is it a lot of business? Do you still put tags on the doors for
Yep.
business people or let them know? That seems to be a lot. I mean, for what we have here, 12.
Well, the guys pick and choose which ones they do. That can include Pierce, Happy Tails, We Energies, all the different businesses.
Okay.
And you don't want to, one of the things that, they're bright orange. So if you put a tag on a door too early in the night, and they get hit, it looks kind of dumb, so it's usually early morning.
Right. Anything else on the calls?
Nope.
Okay.
Next, we have the locker room policy. I put this one together. It is also already core standards verified with the state. It's compliant. Should you adopt this one or want to make any changes, we would have to make a copy of this or put it on a plaque or something and put it outside the locker rooms and then one inside the locker room. And we can't use the locker rooms until the policy's been approved. It's pretty straightforward. I looked at 2 or 3 different ones and they're all very similar.
Is this something that has to go to the attorney for?
I've briefly touched on it with him. The good news about this policy is that there's a specific statute that says here's what you have to have.
And that's
And
what you read.
in general, it's your policy. You almost copy the state statute to say here's what it is. So
Statute
this-
175-22
Yeah.
basically gives you everything that's listed below it.
Yep.
Okay.
So
That's
this one-
required, so
Okay.
it complies. But I think that needs to go, does this need to go to the council to be approved because this is gonna affect all the employees?
Well, it's a policy, so
It's
yeah,
a-
it'd have
it's
to
a
go to
policy,
the council.
so,
Right.
yeah, it would have to go for full council for approval.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions with it?
No. I'll make a motion that we adopt the locker room policy.
Okay, I'll second it. We have no questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
The last time we brought up the ballistic vest reimbursement policy, I think Nick said he wanted to have a discussion about it and get some input on what people thought. A couple of things came up. Patrick and I were talking today, is one of the things we might take into consideration if we do have a part-time officer that stays with us for 5 years, are they eligible for that? And then the dollar amount, if that's something that you're amenable to, a ballistic vest runs between 500 and you can get up to $1,700. If somebody were to buy a $600 vest, then maybe we could look at reimbursing them 300, half of it.
Well, I think that's what we had said last time, was half the price up to 400. That we wouldn't go above 400, but if they paid 500 or 600 for a vest, we're only going to pay half that. We would not be paying the whole thing.
So do you want me to just put another line in that says up to 400 or half the cost of the actual vest?
That's what we had said
Yeah,
last time. Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
up to half,
Half,
half of the cost of the vest,
up to $400.
At a maximum
not
of
to,
400.
not
Not
to
to
exceed
exceed
$400.
No.
And then what's your date that are you going to just accept new people from now on, or is this retroactive, or?
I would say it would start with our latest employee. All the other guys have vests. The only other question would be is if they stay with us for 5 years, would they get the opportunity to have your vest expires in 5 years? I personally think that would be,
I think it's
if we had somebody stay 5 years, that there's some dedication there, but it's also their part-time job, so I think they would apply too.
I would say yes, because we can't put anybody in the field that doesn't have proper PPE. So
Right.
if they stay for 5 years, then I would think this policy would still apply. I guess what I would rename this is your part-time employee ballistic vest reimbursement policy.
Okay. I will bring it to the next meeting finalized and move forward there. Next is the discussion on the Charger and police vehicles. We have all of our vehicles out back. I assume they're all out there now. We used the Dodge up until about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. We had people going to training back and forth in Hartford, so we were using all of our squads to get people back and forth from point A to point B. And then we parked it, and then the last 2 days we've been using it again because we had more people than cars to use. And with that, Sergeant Leschke's got some information he wants to throw out there for you guys to consider.
So we replaced the 2008 Dodge with the 2016 as is, same style car, just newer. I went through, we purchased it, it was approved December 17th of 2007. We purchased that car for $23,558 from Flock Automotive. I guess, looking at the costs, I went through all the inventory for the cars that we have. We can keep all 4 cars if you're so willing, without requiring any cost for more long guns, more radars, more radios. The car sits as is and can be in service. It was in service today without taking anything out and sparing that car from shorting it from any type of equipment. Talking with Pat, I confirmed the insurance for that car is about $550 a year. I guess if you took into consideration various trainings and getting into paying mileage for personal use vehicles, the $550 is really the only cost that I can see that is above and beyond going from 3 cars to 4 cars. Personally, looking at our amount of training hours per year, which is 144 hours, and I used the number 6 staff. There's 4 of us, but potentially there's 9, and not everybody requires a squad, so I used the number 6. 144 hours of training, that's a substantial amount of time for all of us to be running around, plus filling shifts, plus working current investigations. Obviously, we're offering the 24-hour service, and today is a prime example that I was working my regular patrol shift. Corporal Rogie was in, and Officer Maliga were in working a drug investigation. I don't believe the chief had any meetings today, but should he have to be out and about, I don't think it's reasonable that the chief doesn't have a vehicle at his disposal when he needs to be wherever he needs to be. Just a list of responsibilities I listed was patrol, investigation, chief's meetings. I belong to and represent a couple different organizations that the chief supports, was as far as Wisconsin Law Enforcement Training Officers Association, agency assist, special details, transports, conferences. Other examples that I think keeping the car, we did have a gun call out in the community. I was out of town, unable to respond, which it is what it is at that point. The chief, I think, was awake but chose not to respond given the circumstances at hand. And no need to get into that, but I think it's reasonable that he has a vehicle as a supervisor, as the chief. I have a vehicle as a supervisor. The other officers have vehicles at their need when they come in at a moment's notice, and we're not responding in an official fashion with our personal vehicles. Can we do it? Yeah. When we have to respond at 1 o'clock in the morning because there's a, would it be fair to say, hostage type situation going on? I guess I don't want to run to wherever else to get another car. I want to be able to respond immediately from my driveway and be, not that these cars are assigned by any means. Anybody can come and use any of these cars. It's not like we're all toting around our own cars and using them all for personal business. I guess my point is that for the $550 a year, we understand responsible maintenance. We're not looking at replacing an engine if this car were to die. We're not looking at, huge transmission replacements. If the car expires on its own, then we choose to get rid of it. I talked to a representative from Neville Motors. There are options that if we chose to get rid of it, that they would send it through the auction for us. Rough numbers was about $1,500, they thought. I did talk to 5 people of the community in various different responsibilities and roles. I didn't get permission to use their name on camera. I guess I'd share those names with you afterwards. But the overall response was that they trusted the administration to make good choices, and if we felt the need for the car, that they would support it. They didn't really say yes or they didn't say no. They just felt that we would be acting in an appropriate manner. So I am willing to track mileage and uses of the car. I would just ask that you consider keeping it for the $550 a year, and we see how long it lasts and how it works out. If there are comments from the public, I'm more than willing to sit down. I have all the maintenance records. The car is solid at this point. There's been no major maintenance done on it, short of a water pump. tie rod ends as far as turning and stuff like that, but overall the car is pretty sound. And I don't think that for the $550, I think it definitely outweighs our benefit as a 24-hour service. And I understand you guys have to answer to the constituents and the public, why are we supporting 4 cars? If we were looking to buy a brand new one and have 4 cars, I guess I would say absolutely not. But where we're looking just to keep one for a insurance
Yeah.
cost of $550 a year, that's I guess where I'd ask for your consideration. And I don't know if you have any comments or.
That's the same concept as Go Across, even where they have someone floating with when a call goes out. I mean, it's too important not to have that availability.
And is it every day that there's 4 of us working?
Mm.
No, but
Or lately.
I think over the average of a week, between the chief and I and Corporal Rogies and leadership of Packer County, tomorrow I'm in doing school presentations. Thursday I'm doing a presentation in the school. I mean, we're on our off time. We're not off. We're still expected to be places and doing things and being proactive in our roles as the Weyauwega Police Department. So
Yesterday is a good example too. We have an investigation that was ongoing, which we won't get into the details of, but we had 2 people in custody, one here and one in
Baraboo.
Baraboo in the Sauk County Jail. The victim was one of ours here, and in a very timely fashion, we had to get down to the Sauk County Jail to interview this guy because he's looking at a life sentence on the crime. So we had to divide and conquer. Get one person to go down there, one to interview. There's one remaining here, and we have people spread out. And for all the things Brandon said, I guess I would understand your position if you said, oh, no, but part of me sits back and looks at it is a benefit to us. It is another tool in the toolbox, and it's also, I've asked a few people what they think, and I've gotten the similar reactions to Brandon. It says, if you need it, keep it. If we parked, the Pack County Sheriff's Department invited all of them down here, every single one of them is gonna pull up in their own vehicle. Now, it's a different dynamic, and they're all over the county, but the same premise that Brandon mentioned is if they get called into a fatal accident, that homicide, they have a car to get in and go to it.
What's the annual maintenance on that Charger? Besides the insurance?
We run oil changes because we run synthetic in the majority of the vehicles.
Mhm.
We go about 5,000 miles. So an oil change, tire rotation is, I don't have that number, I venture to guess $75 to $100. However, I guess if you're putting miles on that car, if you didn't have that car, you're putting those same miles on a different vehicle. So that's what I meant as far as
Yeah.
maintenance
Well,
goes.
I understand that,
So you figure, you go by the mileage? You don't go by the hours?
Well, with synthetic, they say you can go about 6,000,
Right.
taking into consideration the hours for easy figuring and to make sure our cars are in for service. We say about 5,000 miles. So we have
Yeah.
maybe 500 miles of run time that the car is just idle, running radar, doing whatever. I mean, we can look at that closer, but for easy figuring and keeping a good schedule, we go about 5,000 miles. And then every time the tires are rotated.
My only other concern was when I looked at the CIP, we went from 2 cars to 3 cars. The thought was that we would spread out between buying new ones. When I looked at the CIP when it was passed last month, we had a squad car every other year again. Now granted, that money is not spent and that's just placer money. But, if we're keeping multiple squad cars, we need to spread out buying new ones.
Well, I think,
Even though we,
I guess I can't speak too much on the CIP and the budgeting, but we pushed out the purchase of a new car another year
3 years on this last
Yeah,
month.
3 years on this one.
by
No,
keeping a third car.
Right.
So,
It's like an experiment, I guess, is the best way to look at it. If it works out and we got another year or two out of that car, that is less miles that are gonna be going on one of the other three.
Right.
And maybe able to push out another car.
That was my other question is, okay, if you save all four, when's the next one gonna be? When are you gonna be looking for another new one? Are we gonna be able to look out there 3 years from now and say,
Well-
go ahead, or like you said, if this one dies after we say, yeah, okay, we're gonna go with 4 cars, 6 months from now it dies, you're gonna come and
Then
say, we're gonna need another one?
I would say we're down to 3. And then when that, if things go according to my projected schedule, the Explorer's gonna be the next one to be replaced. The night, we call it the night car, the short bus.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
That would be the next one to be replaced. And I guess at that same time, say the Dodge lasted that entire, till that rotation happened, the Dodge would go, and then that Explorer would probably fall into that.
Yeah.
And we just keep
Yeah.
going as is. And, I know you had some issues with markings on squads. If we were to extend that out and be a 4-car rotation, definitely 2 would always be marked, and 2 would probably not be, just for the way we operate. So, if that's an issue, I'm looking out that far that,
It is an issue with me.
yep, and I understand that, and
And 2 years ago, in my position, I asked to put it on, and that's why I didn't go back to that position, is because I felt that I was being overruled by the rest of the community. I don't have a problem with any of the 4 in this room.
yeah. And they're not, they're here because the cars
Yeah.
are here,
No,
so.
that's
can't
fine.
move
I'm
them all
glad,
myself.
no, I'm glad to see them here. I really am, because they know what's really happening.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put it out that I'm a little upset, because in my 20 years, I have been on a council, I've heard other council people, and I have said, we can't go on highway. And I understand sometimes you have to. There's sometimes you have to. But I have a couple occasions where people have called me, and it's none of you 4 in here. But I'm filling my truck one day at the BP in Sunset Curve.
Mhm.
And I happened to look up, and the squad car turned on about, its lights about 100 feet from the 49 exit there. Little green car pulled off to the side, taller person got out, they talked, looks like he must have took the license, ran it, handed the license back, they turned around, they went to Fremont, he went back. I've had another individual that just told me that he works at Agri-Pier. He left work the other night at 3 o'clock in the morning. Was driving home, got just about out the chimney in before the officer turned his red lights on.
Okay,
Gave him a citation for not having a license plate light bulb.
okay.
Why are we driving way out there for that when we got, you telling me drugs and everything? We're worried about a license plate light bulb?
Right.
I could have saw, yes, okay, if that's a violation, hey, maybe you ought to get it fixed. Have a nice evening and move on. Another individual went all the way out to them, almost to the crossings before they got stopped. To me, if you can't stop them within the edge of the city limits, then I don't think it's worth us stopping.
Well, some of those indicators that you're talking about, license plate lights, and is giving us probable cause to stop the vehicle, but we gotta be quite careful there, because if we're following a vehicle and we get to the city limits and say we're done, and that person's intoxicated and crashes a half a mile later, they're coming back. Somebody's gonna come back to us and say, well, why didn't you stop? Now, the one you're talking about by the crossings, I'm not aware of that. The BP, I know that was a drug arrest, if I remember correctly, that was initiated in the city, and because of a traffic hazard, he wasn't able to get there in time, or catch the vehicle in close proximity to the city. The crossing was one I'm
This
not
was
aware
a
of.
female driver, and she had 2 little kids in the car.
That's the one we're talking about?
Yeah, Justin got a pipe out of the vehicle, some marijuana.
Well,
Or
and
did, people never got out of the car. Did he do that? I mean, can he do that with them in the car?
I think she
Yeah.
handed it to him.
Okay,
He
It-
may have smelt it and asked her, and she turned it over or something.
okay,
like
yeah,
that.
there was 2 little guys bouncing around in the back. And I thought maybe it was because they weren't in car seats or weren't in
Sure.
seat belts.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate all your comments, and as the patrol supervisor, you have my number, and anytime, I mean, we can certainly look on our call logs and answer and explain, you know, just as you're on camera, explain all these different, I don't know if this is a setting, but certainly,
Yep.
I'll give you every explanation that we did and why we did it, and I'm a phone call away, or I'm here.
I'm sure once in a great while you will do
There
something
are-
dumb, so to speak, and
And we can't make people stop where we want them either. I mean, sometimes they go till they're in a lighted place because they don't feel comfortable being pulled over in a dark area. I mean,
Yeah, and every traffic stop
It's
is
different.
is documented, so there'll always be a lot of difference to figure out. I would rather have you have that information on any particular case so you can answer to it than,
you know,
Right. And
For-
all I can say is I can't answer it, but I can ask questions.
yep, you certainly can.
because I look at it if, I call them my guys, if my guys are out doing something wrong and I'm approving it and letting it go without making sure it's legit, then I'm on the chopping block. And if he's letting me do it, let them go, then we're, you know, it all rolls downhill. And I'm, like to make sure I keep tabs on
I
that we're
guess if you
staying
can-
within our parameters.
Does this have to have a decision that you want to do like now? I mean, because I guess what I'm thinking is I'd like to look at some more numbers.
How does this fall in your budget?
Yes.
It would just be, the cost of the insurance and then the oil
Right.
and,
All right, well, I know how much it costs it'd be, but how does it fall into your budget? We already know that you're probably spending more on manpower right now because of things going on. So,
if it became a fiscal implication where it was like he said, a catastrophic breakdown, and we spent $500 on insurance, I'd say that's a wash because we're just gonna get rid of the car anyway. And in the history that I have with selling our old vehicles, that one, because it's a Dodge Charger, might get 1,500, a big might, but what happens is they know those are all squad cars and that they have lots of idle time hours on them, and that brings the value way down. I mean, if that was a personal vehicle of somebody's, would you figure it out? It'd be $5,000-6,000.
Right.
well, I understand that, you know,
I think what Nick's trying to say though is the budget.
we're-
Where do you have in your budget right now? Where are you sitting with? You just got done telling us there's been extra manpower, so that looks like that might be going over. With the using all 4 squads, how is the fuel budget looking? How is
The
how
fuel
is that-
budget, well, that, unless it shoots back up to $4, the fuel won't be an issue.
But that's what
that's
I
what
think
we're worried
that's
about, though,
what
is
we're
'cause
looking
you only
at.
have X amount of dollars to spend.
And I can look at that. I didn't do it for tonight's meeting.
Well, it's tough right now too.
Because we're in transition between,
There's that, and it's worth a quarter into the year too.
Right.
So you can lose track on your budget, and you can get ahead on your budget too. You know, in the next 6 months. But in repairs, I think you guys are sitting at it's like $3,500, and the last couple of years, they've been underneath that.
It really, I mean, you kind of said it, we have extra manpower in, we're not walking. I mean, like last night, Justin went down to Baraboo, then we still had to put a patrol shift on. There still has to be a supervisor that's gonna be able to respond to whatever the next big thing is. I mean,
And then
I think if we watch it closely, if it becomes to be an issue or it becomes heir apparent that it's going to cost more than the budget can handle, I think we'd put a stop to it.
yep,
The other thing you can do too is in July you'll have half the year, and you can slap that against your budget and take a look at.
Yeah,
How you're
we can
doing
look at
halfway
it in
through,
3
too.
months.
I see it as a very responsible experiment, if you want to call it that.
And one of the other things I think got overlooked is when talking to Brandon when he first brought this up, I look back at when I started and what we have now and how much equipment we have to take with us. When we go to these overdoses or a drug house and that's a crime scene, we have to bring all of our tools to the crime scene. And we have a lot. We have a lot of stuff we bring to the game.
And they are out there, I mean, that's why they're here.
We brought them today because we thought, you guys might as well go out and see what we have. I mean,
I can appreciate that working out of a panel van myself, and the one time I go to, like I went somewhere today and I left my tool belt on the job. Luckily I had extra stuff, but I know the feeling. I mean, you got to be prepared,
would you be all right with this if we did, like Patrick said, a trial run through July? And then we'll bring back the numbers, we'll track the maintenance.
We track our mileage anyways. We can
Mileage
track
is
the
already
maintenance.
tracked.
I'd be very transparent with you.
I have no problem with that. I look at what we just passed on rec committee for 3 hours of music, rent these guys an amplifier or whatnot for 3 hours, we're gonna pay $500-600. Now there's,
Possibly.
well, you get what I'm saying. My gosh, there's five, for a few people going, tapping their feet.
The biggest,
Talk responsibility. Just put it in perspective. The one time you can't make it and somebody does die or something, and then everybody's, weren't you more prepared? I know you're being very responsible on tracking and all that, but put the lens out a little bit wider.
It's our hope to get let's say we got $1,000 for the car, $1,000 worth of use out of it without it costing us any money. Without it negatively impacting the budget. How's that? It's gonna cost money because it does take gasoline and needs oil changes.
There's a cost to everything.
I think
There's a cost to
the
everything.
biggest thing is going to be is try to sell it to some of the community.
I'm willing to talk to any of them.
The only,
I know
You
they,
know,
yeah, I know.
and I know this is on video, but you guys in the coffee shop in the mornings with your
Right.
yakking, I'll just put them out there, that the first thing that's gonna come up is, why do we need 4 squads? Well, we got 4 full-time officers. Well, why do they each need their own car? That's one of my biggest things. As far as what you've told me here, I can understand it. I can see some of the stuff that's going on.
Well, maybe we should make some discs of the meeting and get ready to hand them out, but I don't see that happening. I know the people you're referencing who,
Yeah,
and that's one of those things that frustrates me is they get misinformation or parts of information on something that occurred in a meeting and it's suddenly amplified 5 times what it started as.
Are they also the ones that would be willing to come and talk to you?
Some would,
Probably not.
but most probably
Rather
not.
sit in the shadows. I don't know. I don't care if that's on video or not. I mean,
it's remote.
job's got to get done. Get done professionally and right, responsible.
Yeah. I'm okay with it. I guess Bruce, Nick and I just said, I think we'll give it a 3-month trial.
Yeah,
And if
Yeah, we
you
can
can,
always get rid
and
of
if
it.
you can,
Yeah, that's
Brandon,
all you really wanted
keep
was
track
time.
of some of the numbers.
We do all the fuel, all the
Mileage,
mileage, dates that it's being operated.
Yep.
Yeah, we do
That's
that
already
thing.
being tracked, but
Right.
the
And
next step
again-
would be
And again, maybe like,
the cost.
the other part would be is not that we wanna, but to see that there is busy time cards, just kind of to see that all blends in together, that, like, we wouldn't know that, he went to Baraboo,
Right.
unless you sat here and told us.
exactly.
A lot of people, I mean, nobody would.
Right.
Glad you
That's
said
where-
that because that,
That's where you guys rely on us to
Right.
make sure that.
and the training thing going down to Hartford area. I
And
mean, nobody sees that. They just see if maybe somebody happened to stop on the way to municipal court at a Walmart, like I've heard before, which was for something, I mean, that's all we see is what we want to see.
Right.
And
I,
it's good to hear that
I
other
used to
stuff.
get the time cards, and I mean, at least then I knew, because I could finally ask questions to you or Jerry about the codes, so I kind of knew, okay, there was something, they were on a special assignment, or, which then you can kind of answer for some of that, because you know what's happening.
Right.
Yeah, some of the things that have been going on most recently were things that we wouldn't be able to share. You'll find out more about that in probably 4 weeks when we meet again, but some of the other things too, and it's, I guess we should keep an open line of communication, is when people see one of our squads in Green Bay, they're immediately like, why is there a squad in Green Bay? Well, maybe we're taking it in for maintenance, maybe we're at NWTC for training. You know, there's a lot of reasons, and people always jump to conclusions, and everybody in here knows that.
Everywhere we go, we're documented.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
We check in and out of the county.
That's why it's better to have all the squads marked, so they can see it is, because now they pick, there was a black Charger, I saw it was over by Iola. Well, that could be a Wapaka County one, it could be another one, but, because I've seen that particular, you know, and that's their biggest thing, is the black squad cars.
we're very transparent. I mean, it's no reason to hide. I mean, we're,
But I would like to, seeing as you have the squads here, I don't know about you other two, but I would like to just see what has to be.
That's why we brought them tonight. So if you want to maybe take action on your ambulance thing, and then we can go out and.
Yeah, what we'll do too, and not that this is gonna be professional camera work, but because two of you together looking at something is technically still the meeting, we'll probably just grab the camera outside too, just to tape it. Honestly, if the video footage is not up to par, we'll edit it out.
The guys from the coffee shop want to have them stop a squad and look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But because it's still good, I mean, we won't have you adjourn though when you go out there. It'll still be
Right.
part of the meeting, and then
Oh.
we'll probably just adjourn from out there then, if that's okay.
How about something like even when there'll be open house tours of the municipal building and all the
well,
new.
that's
Oh, we'll have 'em
definitely
there.
coming.
And so you're
Yeah.
planning maybe to open up the squads
Yep.
and get, and, you know, as much,
Our hope for the
Exposure,
open
like-
house, even though it's preliminary right now, is to, other than our evidence room and what's inside the armory safe, is open. Everybody can come in and see anything we have. You're not gonna be opening drawers and reading any paperwork, but it's their city hall and their police department too, and if they wanna see where we work and how it works,
I'm excited.
we'll be there, and I'm really pumped about it.
The elementary kids come through the fire station every year.
and here's the thing too, people,
We
if they,
can't do that here, and now we can.
if people even saw these total calls and what's going on, I mean, just being on council for a time I have been on this committee, you say, really? Really? You know, just that alone, I don't know if that's ever online or, I mean, it, you know, stuff like that. I mean, there's answers, there's exposure right here, you know what I'm saying? There's just like, really, mailbox damage, you know, and 58 stops or something like that. I saw 52 stops. Well, I only saw 2. I don't think there was 52. You know, I mean, there's so, it's right there. You know,
You
there's
just
a
write
lot
that
going
down
on.
to my mailbox now?
Right. It's an open-ended investigation.
Like Brandon said, it's all transparent, and one of the things that's, I heard this week was, we make too many OWI arrests. We're arresting too many drunk drivers. This is the second month in a row we have not had a drunk driver.
I have to agree with you, Jerry, that's exactly what I've heard.
And there isn't, we haven't in 60-some days had a drunk driver.
So you, it's bad to,
We've had
bad,
drugged
uh,
drivers, but not drunk drivers.
it's bad to arrest a lot of drunk drivers. Is that what I heard?
Some people don't like it, and
Because it's affecting their business in
Right.
town. Because we don't have any other business in town. It's just basically that, the grocery store. So there's
Okay.
nobody coming to Weyauwega anymore to do anything, because there's nothing here. And if you do stop for refreshment, then you get stopped.
Yeah.
That's the attitude that you hear.
but
Okay.
if you
Their
look at
homicide
I
is so
guess
much
I've heard
better.
that.
if you look at the numbers, they don't back what these people are saying when they say, well, you're arresting all these drunk drivers. It's just not happening.
Yeah,
I mean, it does happen, but it's not as frequently as everybody perceives.
okay. Well, I know that, that drug thing is getting worse. I store my Mustang out at airport storage.
Mhm.
About 8 units got broken into last night, and one of them was mine. They, thankfully are not out to vandalize, they're out to get it quick, and they just bang those things in, they're so cheap. They bang it there and the thing pops out and they lift it up. So anyway, I'm going to get it now, I wanted to cover it and get it out of there, because now, yeah, it's gotta be those drug kids, you know, I mean, I'm getting it out now, because now it's not secure and they know what's in there along with everybody else said they know what's in there. But yeah, I know you guys didn't call that. I don't know if you heard about that one or not yet, but it's like, you know, saying about the drugs, people driving and stuff. But yeah, first thing I thought of was it's got to be drug addicts, you know. I mean, what else are you going to go take that brazen and go out there and be like that and just bang all those in real quick? And you're trying to find, you know. I'm just glad they weren't into vandalism too, but.
Right. Pat, you want to take the Gold Cross contract up?
Yeah, are you doing anything with the vehicle? Any motions or anything like that? Or is
Need
it
a
just
motion
an
to let it-
advisement?
I
I mean, if you're not acting to sell the vehicle, by your inaction, you're keeping the vehicle. So, I mean, if you want to just put it in the minutes that we'll report back in July.
We have
Yeah.
the understanding of what you're going to be looking for at the end of July.
Yeah.
Okay? That sounds good. On the discussion possible action on the Gold Cross contract, I will tell you that I'm going to recommend that you don't take any action tonight, but we can review it though real quick.
Did you want to read it for the camera?
We have not yet. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
But
Check.
we could show it to the camera, maybe. We might do the same thing. You have a copy of the contract in your packet. And I think what I'll do is I'll review a couple of things really briefly, and we still have to come back yet. And I will explain to you why. There are a couple copies of our existing contract, which is what we signed when they purchased Weyauwega Area Ambulance. I think I have 3 extra ones if you'd like to take them with you. But very, very, very quickly, if you look at the new contract, you'll notice that the numbering is going to point out to you what they did with that contract. So there's numbers on our own contract. I think we had number 1 through 23.
Yeah.
And when you look at the new contract, you'll have 1, 2, 3, then it jumps to 6. So there's a lot of numbers missing, and it's essentially, I think, whatever they took out of it. And what they took out of it, the main thing on our end is that they used to contract with the little clusters. So it was the city of Weyauwega with our adjoining towns, city of Waupaca with their towns, city of New London with their towns. A year ago, they had proposed contracts with each municipality, each town, city, village individually. So they took us out of the clusters. And I don't believe that our cluster ever voted on it. We never really voted to approve a contract. So we're still working off of the original contract that we got from them when they took over. And we're, about a year and a half ago, they had been pushing to contract individually. This new contract is an effort to get all of the cities, towns, and villages to sign the exact same document, which I questioned at first. I think it was back in November. I had asked them, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get all these communities to sign off on the same language? And my understanding is that they haven't been able to yet. But in the process, they took out a lot of locally specific items. So our contract really needs to have an identifier on the uses and ownership of the ambulance garage in town.
Right.
And this contract, because in Waupaca, Gold Cross owns the building. In New London, it's part of the hospital, but I think they own their section of that garage. And then the Valley services some of the other towns. So they took out that language. I think there's a little bit more work to do in clarifying then what's an allowable use for the garage. One of the items that they took out, and I've got some notes, I'll just run down them really quick. The first and most important change that they made is that they went from basic life support coverage or service to advanced life support, which is essentially changing from EMTs over to all paramedics. And I'm just running off of the old contract. The 1C is the on-site presence, which identified in our contract that they had to fully staff with on-call EMTs on a 24-hour per day basis, and then at least one ambulance shall be available to respond to calls at all times, and then there would be an additional ambulance parked there. Well, we've talked about how that changed. When Gold Cross came through, they took one paramedic rig out of Waupaca and brought it over by us here. Now that's been taken out completely, the on-site presence, and we talked about this idea of them floating between here in Waupaca, here in New London. and now here, and 45 and 96 because they picked up the town of Dale and the village of Hortonville. So that's there's a park and ride right there where that's another floating point, I guess. So they took out the on-site presence language. They took out the item number 3 was the equipment and staffing of the ambulance, which had laid out what's all involved with the building, what type of equipment that's in the building is theirs, what's ours, how are they staffing the building. That's been taken out. And then all the language that says related to who owns the facilities and whether Gold Cross has any options or interest in it, or they don't. But that's not in the new contract. Item number 8 in the old contract was a 1-level system, which was they had 1 level of basic life support is what they provided. They took that out, obviously. Item number 11 outlined the expendable supplies, which had laid out what they could be, what would be expendable, what they could charge to patients. That's not identified in the new contract at all. So we don't really have a whole lot on specifics for what's billable and what's not. That's an area that we would want to have a little bit more info on.
I would think so.
A lot of the language that they kept in, though, basically is just word for word what they had before. So there's not, there wasn't any changing under the table or anything like that. Everything's pretty straightforward except for the items that they took out. And in some cases with the new contract, they just didn't change the numbering, so you get an idea that there's some things that aren't in there. Because they're going to this very large consortium, is what they're calling it, Gold Cross requested that starting in November, that rather than coming to each cluster or each community, they want to have one big meeting with all of the communities. So the Weyauwega cluster with their towns, here with our towns, New London, and then they go towards Ellington, Hortonville, Dale. There's a couple other communities through there too. And what that means is, rather than them coming to us once a year or twice a year, they're coming out and all the communities are going to wherever they're going to be. In November, they were at the Weyauwega Library, and they had asked who would be willing to host these for 2016. And obviously, because we're building our building, I put it out there that we would be more than happy to have them. And the comment had been made that, in general, we're pretty centrally located compared to all the communities that they serve. I mean, we're south, but we're still in the middle. And there's a chance that every July we may host the whole consortium where all the town chairmen, village presidents, mayors, or their administrators, clerks, they would all be coming here to our facilities, which would be a benefit to us, and that will be right downtown. But then we probably could also have the police, fire, and ambulance committee just come to that meeting too. And then you could treat it as a full committee meeting if you wanted to.
That would make
Good
sense.
idea.
So that's going to be in July. I think that's the 3rd week. We didn't identify a full date, but it's like the 3rd week in July. We'll have that here. And then what they want to talk about in July is how often should they be meeting? Should it be once a year, quarterly? How often do you want to report? And this contract lays out, I think, a quarterly report we're supposed to get on volumes and billing and how they're doing. So again, there's some language that has to be updated here. I did drop a line to Gold Cross that I had asked about how does this work with our building, because essentially this is replacing the old contract. If we get rid of the old contract, there is no agreement on how that building's used. And my understanding is that in talking with the towns, they don't believe they have an interest in that building, that it's the city-owned building. So we should talk about that. I just wanted to just touch briefly on the rate that we've been charged the last few years, and this will be super quick. But in 2013 and 2014, we were getting charged $23.07 per capita per person. So our ambulance fee was $43,846 for those years. Gold Cross took over in 2014. Going into 2015 is when they started shifting the paramedic rigs and floating, and that's when they cut our rate essentially in half, down to $12.50. So that cut $20,000 off of our annual ambulance cost. We're down to $23,750. Because they picked up the town of Dale and the village of Hortonville, they reduced that amount down to $11 per capita. And so for 2016, we're paying $20,900 for ambulance service. And we've talked about that at budget time, that's a pretty tough number for anybody really to compete with,
Right.
which is a good thing and a bad thing, but that's where we're at. I don't know what their full expansion plans are to expand to more communities, but the thought that we've got is that the larger their range gets, the lower our rate would go. And that's a topic that they wanted to talk about in July. Because there's a lot of communities in the valley, I think, that don't pay anything for the service, but it's because of call volume.
Uh-huh.
Town of Greenville, I thought it was Ellington too. Parts of Ellington pay, parts of it don't. But that'll be in July. Again, I just wanted to run through this because while we've talked about having a contract out there, we really didn't go through it. We didn't really go through it line by line here either, but we will be coming back to it.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah. So we're gonna walk outside for such other matters?
Yeah, we can do that, and then you want to adjourn from outside?
Sure.
They must have heard you talking on camera because they redesigned it. It actually looks pretty sharp. They've worked hard on it.
The only thing that I can't duplicate into that car is the short one-foot stop. But, I guess, you know, for the purposes of keeping the fourth time.